Hello students, welcome back to another Caribbean History Paper 2 2021 video. We have already looked at question 1 to 3 and we are now at question 4, 5 and 6 from the Caribbean History Paper 2 2021 paper. If you missed question 1 to 3, just go over to my channel and you'll find that video there. And we are going to begin with question 4. Define the term asiento, and this is 2 marks. Well, the term asiento refers to a system of licenses or contracts that these were granted by the Spanish crown, and what these contracts or licenses entail was that it allowed foreign nationals, especially the British, the French, and the Dutch, to supply enslaved Africans to Spanish colonies in the Americas. Right? That would be your answer, but I've just given you a little extra note on the asiento. All right, so this contract was originally granted in the early 16th century and it continued into the 18th century as Spain had a monopoly on the slave trade in its colonies, and the asiento were lucrative because at that time they authorized the sale of a specific number of enslaved Africans to Spanish colonies such as Cuba, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. So the asiento was significant because it played a key role in the transatlantic slave trade. It facilitated the forced importation of Africans to work on plantations and in mines in the Caribbean. The asiento also contributed to the growth of European involvement in the Caribbean slave trade, especially for nations like Britain, who later gained the right to provide enslaved Africans under the asiento contract. Question 2. Outline the reason for the establishment of the asiento system used in the Caribbean during the Spanish occupation. Outline the reason for the establishment of the asiento system used in the Caribbean during the Spanish occupation. All right, so the answer to this is one of the reasons for the establishment of the asiento system, and we already know what the asiento system is, was because of labor shortages in Spanish colonies. Now, the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, particularly those that were involved in sugar and tobacco production, they were facing severe labor shortages, right? So the indigenous population had been decreased or by diseases brought by Europeans and harsh treatment, and this led to a demand for a reliable workforce. Hence, the asiento system was one of the ways to address this shortage by legally allowing the importation of enslaved Africans to work in the colonies. So one reason for the establishment of the asiento system was because there were labor shortages in Spanish colonies. Next question, explain 3 horrors in which enslaved Africans would have encountered due to the capture in Africa and during the journey through the Middle Passage. Now, enslaved Africans, right? We all know that they endured unimaginable horrors during their capture in Africa and throughout the journey across the Middle Passage. Now, 3 horrors in which enslaved Africans would have encountered due to the capture in Africa and during the journey through the Middle Passage are brutality and violence during the capture. What do I mean by this? So the enslaved Africans, they were often violently captured in raids or wars that were conducted by rival groups or European traders. The entire villages were attacked, families were torn apart, and those captured faced physical abuse, shackling, and forced marches to coastal trading ports. So most of the captives, they endured long treks to the coast, often trained together with inadequate food or water, resulting in exhaustion and death for many along the way. So brutality and violence during capture was one of the many horrors that enslaved Africans encountered. Another horror would be overcrowding and inhumane conditions on the ships. So during the Middle Passage, enslaved Africans, they were tightly packed into the ship's hold with little space, they had little space to move or to breathe. And they were chained in rows, lying shoulder to shoulder, often in their own filth due to the lack of sanitation. The poor ventilation combined with unsanitary conditions would have led to the spread of diseases such as smallpox, which claimed the lives of many Africans. So the mortality rates during the Middle Passage were alarmingly high. Another horror that the Africans would have encountered is the physical abuse and psychological trauma. Enslaved Africans, they were subjected to physical abuse. They were whipped, beat. Other punishments were inflicted by the ship's crew to enforce obedience and prevent revolts. The psychological trauma of being torn from their homeland, witnessing others dying, the uncertainty of their fate was very profound. So many captives, they lost hope. Some just chose to jump overboard. Some preferred death to the continuing suffering. And these conditions during the capture and middle passage exemplify the horrific experiences that the enslaved Africans faced. Question C. Explain the main activity that took place at each of the 3 points of the triangular trade. Explain the main activity that took place at each of the 3 points of the triangular trade. So we know that the triangular trade is referring to the transatlantic system of trade, which involve three main points. So we had point A from Europe, point B, Africa, and point C, the Americas, including the Caribbean. Now, each point of the trade was associated with specific activities that were central to the system's operation. So we are going to look at the main activity that took place at each of the 3 points of the triangular trade. So let's look at point one, which was Europe. And this was where manufacturing and exporting of goods took place. Now, the main activity in Europe was the production and exportation of manufactured goods, such as they exported textiles, firearms, metal tools, alcohol, and other trade items. Now, these goods were shipped to Africa and traded for enslaved people. So the first point was Europe, and this was where manufacturing and exporting of goods were taking place. Some of the goods were firearms, metal tools, alcohol, and other trade items that were shipped to Africa and traded for enslaved people. Now, European merchants, investors, and the shipbuilders, they played a key role in financing and organizing the triangle trade. All right, so the second point um, of the triangular trade and the activities or the activity that took place at that point was in Africa. So we left Europe, which was the first point of the triangular trade, and now we are at Africa, which is the second point of the triangular trade. What activity took place in Africa? Well, capturing and trading enslaved people. So in Africa, the primary activity was the acquisition and sale of enslaved Africans. So African traders and the European merchants, they exchanged goods that were brought from Europe, and at point one in Europe we refer to goods such as alcohol, textiles, etc. So the African traders, they were exchanging these goods with the European merchants for enslaved individuals, right? Who were often captured through warfare or maybe raids or coercion, right? These captives were forcibly transported to the Americas along the Middle Passage. And in an earlier question, we talk about the inhumane um, challenges or conditions that these African slaves had to endure during the journey of the Middle Passage. Now, that was the second point, which is in Africa. The third point of the triangular trade was the Americas slash Caribbean. Now, what activity took place at this point? Well, plantation economy and exporting goods. The main activity in the Americas and the Caribbean was the production of cash crops. This included tobacco, cotton, coffee, sugar, using the forced labor of the enslaved Africans. So the enslaved Africans that they traded along the two other journeys of the triangular trade, they were used to produce these crops. Now, the crops were then exported to Europe. All right, so ports in the Caribbean and the Americas were also key locations for selling enslaved Africans to plantation owners. So, based on what we are seeing, the triangular trade system, it was fueled by the transatlantic economy, right? And this caused a lot of exploitation of enslaved Africans, which in turn they were enriching European powers at the expense of human lives and suffering. So just to recap the question, which was to explain the main activity that took place at each of the 3 points of the triangular trade, and that was in Europe. We had manufacturing and exporting of goods. The second point was in Africa. The activity there was capturing and trading enslaved people. Then the third point was the Americas slash Caribbean, and the activity there was plantation economy and exporting goods. All right, so we move on to our next question, and this is question 5. So I hope you did very well with practicing the questions from question 4 of the 2021 Caribbean History Paper 2. Now we are at question 5, and the theme is resistance and revolt. The Haitian Revolution refers to a series of conflicts, starting in 1791 among Haitian enslaved people, colonists, the arms of the British and French colonizers, and ending with Haitian independence in 1804. So we are given this little scenario. And the question is, All right, so we are to state the names of the two groups of white Asians in Saint Domingo at the time of the Asian Revolution. Now, the two groups of white Haitians that was in Saint Domingo, which is modern day Haiti today, at the time of the Haitian Revolution were the Grand Blanc and the Petit Blancs. Now, when we talk about the Petit Blancs, right? These were the poor white population or the poorer white population, and this population was consisted of artisans, shopkeepers, overseers, and laborers. They locked, they locked the wealth and status of the Grand Blancs, but still benefited from the racial hierarchy of the colony. So that was the Petit Blancs of the which were one of the two groups of the white Asians in Saint Domingo. Now the other group of white Asian were the Grand Blancs, and these were the wealthy white population owners. They were merchants, they were colonial elites, and these Grand Blancs, they controlled most of the land and wealth in Saint Domingo. All right, so the two names are the two groups of white Asians at the time in Saint Domingo at the Haitian Revolution was the Grand Blanc, which was the wealthy white people, and the Petit Blanc, which were the poorer white population. So I hope you guys got that question correct. And our next question is, state the names of any two leaders of the Asian Revolution between 1791 and 1804. State the names of any two leaders of the Asian Revolution between 1791 and 1804. Now, two prominent leaders of the Asian Revolution between 1791 and 1804 were Toussaint Louverture, and he was a former enslaved man who became the primary leader of the revolution. He organized enslaved people into effective fighting forces, and he also negotiated with European powers. Now, Toussaint, he played a crucial role in the abolition of slavery in Saint Domingo and laying the groundwork for independence. So Toussaint Louverture was one of the leaders of the Asian Revolution between 1791 and 1804. Another leader of the Asian Revolution between 1791 and 1804 was Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Jean-Jacques Dessalines. I hope I pronounced that correct. All right. And Jean was a key military leader under Toussaint Louverture, which was one of the former enslaved men who became a leader during the Asian Revolution, right? So Sean, who later became the first ruler of independent Haiti, he declared Haitian independence in 1804 and is remembered as a pivotal figure in securing freedom for the nation. So Sean and Toussaint, they are both leaders that fought for Saint Domingo independence in 1791 and 1804. Explain three causes of the Asian Revolution. Now, the Asian Revolution began in 1791, and this revolution was driven by a combination of different factors, such as social factors at the time, political factors, and also economic factors. So, what were the three causes of the Asian Revolution? And we are going to look at the three main causes. Now, the first cause of the Asian Revolution was the brutality of the enslavement system. What do I mean by this? St. Domingo, right, had one of the harshest systems of slavery in the world. Enslaved Africans, they were subjected to inhumane treatment. This included physical abuse, malnutrition, working long hours, and a lack of basic rights. Hence, there were high mortality rates and oppressive conditions, which at the time fueled resentment and resistance among the enslaved population, setting the stage for rebellion. So, one of the three causes of the Haitian Revolution was the brutality or the enslavement system. The slaves, African slaves, they were fed up with the inhumane treatment that they were receiving. So that was one of the reasons for the Haitian Revolution. Another reason was the social inequality and racial tensions. Now, the society of Saint Domingo was highly stratified. It had a strict racial hierarchy. So the Grand Blancs, which we referred to earlier in another question, they were the wealthy white people. They controlled most of the land and wealth, while the Petit Blanc were the poor whites, and they resented their lack of status despite their racial privilege. Now, the gens de couleur libres, which are the free people of color, were often wealthy and educated, but they faced a lot of discrimination and they were denied full rights. Now, these divisions created the social inequality, racism. This created a deep tension among the population, and this led to conflicts that contributed to the revolution. Now, another cause for the Haitian Revolution was the influence of the French Revolution and Enlightenment ideas. Now, in 1789, we had the French Revolution, right? And it came with ideals of liberty, it came with equality and fraternity. And the French Revolution of 1789, it inspired many in Saint Domingo, including the gens de couleur libres and the enslaved people, to fight for their rights and freedom. Additionally, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen challenged the legitimacy of slavery, further embodying those who sought to end oppression and equality in the colony. So, these causes, combined with the leadership of figures like Toussaint Louverture and external pressures such as European rivalries, culminated in the Haitian Revolution, resulting in the first successful slave revolt and the establishment of an independent Black Republic in 1804. So let's look back at the question just to summarize. Three causes of the Haitian Revolution, and these were the main causes, were the brutality of the enslaved Africans. We looked at social inequality and racism. And another cause would be the influence of the French Revolution and the Enlightenment ideas. Now, let's take a break. We have been doing so well so far in answering these questions, and I hope that you guys are learning. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Like and comment, turn on that notification bell, and also, guys, if you love this channel and you want me to continue doing videos that will assist students all over the Caribbean, I want you to watch the ads. Watch the ads, guys. That's the only way you can support my channel. Alright? So our quiz time. It's quiz time. It's quiz time. It's quiz time. Now the question is, identify three persons who were associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823. Identify 3 persons who were associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823. All right, so I want you to get your book and your pencils, and you are going to write down your answer for this question. At the end of the video, you will see the answer coming out. So I hope you guys will get this question right. All right, so let's go down to question C. All right, so question C says, and we are going down nicely, guys, discuss 3 key developments that took place during the course of the Asian Revolution. Now, the Asian Revolution took place in 1791 to 1804, and this was marked by several significant developments that helped to shape the trajectory and the ultimate success of this revolution. Now, the 3 key developments that took place during the course of the Asian Revolution are the enslaved revolt of 1791. The revolution began with a large-scale revolt by enslaved people in August of 1791, and this revolt was led by early figures such as Boatman. Now, enslaved Africans across plantations in the northern part of Saint Domingo, they rose up. Yes, they did. They destroyed estates and they demanded freedom. This initial uprising demonstrated the enslaved population's determination to fight for their liberalization, their liberty, their freedom. And it also marked the start of a sustained revolutionary movement. So the first key development that took place during the course of the Asian Revolution was the enslaved revolution of 1791. Now, the second development was the abolition of slavery, and this took place in 1794. Now, let's go back to 1793. So, in 1793, amidst pressure from the revolutionary forces in Saint Domingo and growing instability, the French commissioner in the colony at the time, Ledger Feleste, declared the ending of slavery in the colony. Now, the French National Convention ratified this decision in 1794, making France the first European nation to formally abolish slavery in its colonies. Now, this move aligned the enslaved revolutionaries with France against foreign invaders such as the British and Spanish, temporarily stabilizing French controlled. So one of the 3 developments, or 2 of the 3 developments, we have looked at 2 already. 2 of the 3 developments that took place during the course of the Asian Revolution was the enslaved revolt of 1791, the abolition or ending of slavery in 1794, and also the War of Independence and Asian victory in 1802 to 1804. All right, let me go back. All right, so Napoleon Bonaparte attempted to reinstate slavery in the colony in 1802. And this was led by his brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc. Now the revolution, it intensified. Toussaint Louverture, which was one of the great leaders, was arrested and deported to France, and he died in 1803. But the fight for freedom continued under leaders like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, which was one another great leader. Now, Dessalines led the Asian forces in a decisive campaign against the French, and it culminated in their victory. at the Battle of the Vatares in November of 1803. Now, this victory, forced the French to abandon Saint Domingo, and on January 1st, 1804, Dessalines declared the colony's independence, renaming it Haiti. Now, these developments, guys, highlighted the determination, the resilience of the revolutionary forces, leading to the abolition or the ending of slavery. Now, the defeat of one of the most powerful European empires and the establishment of Haiti as the first independent Black republic in the Western Hemisphere. I know you guys did very well on this question. So, just to summarize the question, it was to three key developments that took place during the course of the Haitian Revolution in 1791 to 1804. And the developments were the enslaved revolt of 1791, the abolition or ending of slavery in 1794, and the War of Independence and Haitian victory in 1802 to 1804. Very good, guys. I know you did very well on this question. And we are at our final question for this video. It is question 6. And question 6 says, identify three persons who were associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823. Now, these three individuals are Kwamina, which was an enslaved deacon and a key leader of the revolt. Kwamina advocated for a peaceful protest rather than violence. Though the revolt eventually it escalated, he became a symbol of resistance and martyrdom after his execution. Another person who were associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823 was Jack Gladstone. Now, Kwamina's son and a central figure in organizing the revolt. So, Jack Gladstone was Kwamina's son, and he was a central figure in organizing the revolt. Jack was instrumental in rallying enslaved workers across plantations to demand their freedom. Another person who were associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823 was Reverend John Smith. Now, Reverend Smith was a British missionary. He was accused of inciting the rebellion because of his efforts to educate and support the enslaved. Although he was not directly involved in the revolt, he was tried and sentenced to death, later commuted to exile, earning the title the Martyr Missionary. So the three individuals associated with the Demerara Revolt of 1823 are Kwamina, Jack Gladstone, and Reverend John Smith. Our next question is, explain three efforts of the Demerara Revolt on the planter class. Now, the revolt of 1823 significantly impacted the planter class, leading to changes in their social, economic, and political standing. Now, here are the three effects of the Demerara Revolt on the planter class. So the three effects of the Demerara Revolt on the planter class are loss of power and increased scrutiny. Now, the Demerara Revolt in 1823, it revealed the cruelty of the plantation system. It brought the planters' practices under harsh scrutiny from abolitionist groups in Britain. Reports of the brutal suppression of the revolt and the execution of enslaved leaders damaged the reputation of the planter class, weakening their influence over colonial practices and diminishing their power in the eyes of the British government. So the three effects of the Demerara revolt on the planter class was that they lost power and it increased their scrutiny. Another effect was economic losses. So the revolt disrupted plantation operations, with many estates being damaged or destroyed during the uprising. The destruction of property and the temporary halt to production caused significant financial losses for the planters, right? So it increased their reliance on loans because they had lost so much financially, they had to be borrowing loans and further weakening their economic position. Another effect of the Demerara revolt on the planters' class was it increased pressure for the abolition of slavery. Now, the brutality that was displayed by these planters during and after the revolt, particularly in the execution of enslaved people and the missionary Reverend Smith, it galvanized abolitionist campaigns in Britain. Now, this campaign it increased pressure on the British government to introduce reforms and ultimately contributed to the abolition of slavery, which definitely undermined the economic foundation of the planters class. So, three effects of the Demerara revolt on the planters class was that they lost power and increased scrutiny. The planter class there they endured a lot of economic loss, especially financially, and it increased pressure for the ending or the abolition of slavery. Now, these effects marked the beginning of the decline in the dominance of the planter class in the Caribbean colonies as the abolitionist movement gained momentum and the era of slavery near its end. Question C, and I hope you guys are doing well in these questions. Discuss three reasons for the failure of the revolt to secure major gains for enslaved population. And I want you to answer this question. Write it in your book, guys. What are three reasons for the failure of the revolt to secure major gains for the enslaved population? Da, 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 da. Give you a few minutes to think about this question. All right, so we're back. So the Demerara Revolt of 1823, despite its scale and significance, it failed to secure major gains for the enslaved population for several reasons. One of those reasons were the lack of coordination and communication. So while the revolt was widespread, it lacked unity, it lacked cohesive leadership, it also lacked effective communication among the individuals who were participating in the revolt. So the enslaved people, they were often unclear about the overall objectives and strategies of the revolt. Some believed that freedom had already been granted by the British Crown because of lack of communication, but withheld by the planters, and this led to confusion about the revolt's purpose. This lack of unity weakened the movement and made it easier for colonial forces to suppress the uprising. So, lack of coordination and communication was one of the reasons for the failure of the revolt to secure major gains for the enslaved population. Another one was overwhelming military response. So the colonial authorities, with the support of local militants and British troops, responded swiftly and brutally to suppress the revolt. The military superiority of the colonial forces, including access to weapons and reinforcements, overwhelmed the largely unarmed or poorly armed enslaved population. Many were killed during the revolt, and those captured faced severe punishment, including execution and flogging. Another reason for the failure of the revolt to secure major gains for enslaved population was harsh repression and no immediate policy changes. So after the revolt, the colonial authorities they enacted several reprisals to deter future uprisings. Hundreds of enslaved people were executed, imprisoned, or subjected to brutal punishments. The fear instilled by these reprisals effectively silenced further resistance in the short term. Additionally, while the revolt increased awareness of the need for reform, it did not lead to immediate emancipation or improved conditions, as the planters and colonial officers maintained their grip on power. So, although the revolt failed to achieve immediate gains, its significance cannot be understated. It highlighted the determination of the enslaved population to resist oppression. It brought international attention to the atrocities of slavery, and it also added momentum to the abolitionist movement, which eventually led to the abolition of slavery in the British Empire in 1834. And guys, we have come to the end of this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you have learned something from this video, and I hope to see you in another Caribbean history paper video. Please remember to subscribe and like this video, leave a comment, and watch the ads, guys, in order to support this channel. See you.